like, share, and subscribe to join us on our improvement journey, 1% at a time. Hello, I'm Craig Thielen, and this is the 1% Better podcast. Today is a very special episode. This is our third season, the finale, the recap, and I've got a good friend and someone who's been a part of this journey from really day one. Paul Batz is joining us to turn the table on me and facilitate and be the host, and I get to be the guest, which I'm looking forward to every conversation with Paul. We've had some great ones over the years. And so we're going to just review what we've been doing here in season 3 and really look back at the entire journey of this podcast and hopefully get some new observations. I'm looking forward to that. And Paul, I'm going to hand the ball over to you.
Thank you. I'm really happy to catch that ball. I'm honored to be on this list. And if I do my math right, we're over 50 now. It seems like this is right. 54, 55 podcasts. And let's just start right there. There's no time to be humble here, Craig. People start things like this all the time and they fizzle. So you've done it. It's amazing. When I look back at all the people you've hosted, I shook my head in amazement. So what's been the most satisfying part of hanging on there and doing this podcast now 3 full years?
Yeah, I mean, it's fun to look back, and I know you've done some similar things. I think you've done 100 of your own. And so it's just fun to really look back and say what happened. I mean, first of all, the word that comes to mind is grateful. I'm super grateful for this is not a one-man show. It's a team. And we've got an amazing person who produces this by the name of April Bile, who runs marketing for Tricentral. And she just does a wonderful job behind the scenes, making me and the guests look good and packaging it up and getting it to the world. The next thing is just the community of, it started with us having an idea, a 20-year anniversary of our company. We wanted to give back stories and relationships and things that we thought people would love to hear and benefit from. And so it started with friends and mentors and close associates, and you were on that list. Mm-hmm. And it's just grown in a way that I would never have anticipated, how one conversation leads to the next. I mean, even just taking you were episode 3, and I'm super grateful for the first people that signed up when this was, nothing. We didn't know what we were doing. Didn't know where it was going. And people said, sure, I'll be on this thing that nobody knows about. And you were one of those. You were number 3. And just if I even look at you, I mean, you're and the good leadership message and your network and your connections are woven through the 3 years. I mean, you've been on yourself twice. And just going to your breakfast that you do such a wonderful job of. I've met people there. And so it's just fun. And that's kind of indicative of every person that comes on the show is essentially becomes a friend of the family, becomes part of it, and their network does. And how that leads to the next set of shows and introductions is just super meaningful. And it's been fun to see that. So I think that's, I've got a lot of reflections on it, but just seeing it grow in ways that you didn't anticipate, and the people that I've been able to meet, and even some of our guests, we've been able to connect them, and it's kind of grown into a small community.
Yeah, I'm very happy to be a part of it. And on that very first time I appeared, I talked about some of our core beliefs here. And one of that is in a framework called the 7 F's. And I'm going to use this because the 7 F's in alphabetical order are faith, family, finances, fitness, friends, fun, and future. And in that opening, you talked about friends who have kind of become part of the family. And when you start something like this for the first time, it's really based on a core belief that what you're doing is important and that people are going to think it's valuable. That's faith for sure. And I'm curious to find out, people who get into podcasting, it's like any other endeavor. You must have, I'm wondering, can you remember your earliest memories of podcasting, and where you heard a podcast and you're like, ooh, that was valuable. And I think maybe I could do that. Do you remember?
I do. I'd say about 5 years ago, I went through in one of the podcasts that was a gentleman by the name of Brian Bogert, who was just one of our recent shows. And then I was on his show, and he does a lot of work. He's got just an amazing life story. And he basically, within the hour podcast that I did on his show, is almost like a therapy session. Like, he went into my childhood, and we were talking about things that I hadn't even thought about for 30, 40 plus years. And one of the things we talked about was about 5 years ago, I went through a pretty big change, and I made a lot of changes in my life, and I got really into sort of health and longevity and whatnot. And when I did that, it naturally brought me to, well, who are the gurus? Who are the biohackers? Who are the experts at this thing? And it wasn't mainstream medicine. Let's just put it that way. It was
that's right.
Alternative. It was lots of things. And the single best place, and really the only place to get that kind of content, was podcasting.
Okay.
So I went deep on it then. Of course, I would say Joe Rogan is sort of the grandfather of podcasting, and his story is really interesting. He didn't ever intend to be a podcaster. In fact, he was just playing around with a buddy. Like, this is 10, 12 years ago. There wasn't even a thing. Podcasting wasn't even a thing. It was just, now the internet had some recording abilities, and you could stream, and YouTube is starting to come online, and it became a thing. It became, all of a sudden, 10 people following became 500, became 5,000, 50,000. Now we know millions of people follow him. And so when we decided to start this, I was curious, because I, listened to many of his podcasts. He has just some of the most amazing guests, most famous people, interesting people. And going back, and I said, well, we're starting this thing. Like, how do we do this? And I went back just to see what his early podcasts, and they were terrible. They were just absolutely like two guys in a garage with T-shirts on, just talking about nothing. So yeah, it was about 5 years ago, and it was mostly in that sort of health and wellness space. And now it's just, to me, like, there's so many of them. I mean, there's actually, I think there's over 4 million at any given time podcasts. And you're right, like, very few of them, I think something like 90+% never make it over 10 episodes.
Yep, that's right.
So it's like a lot of people throw something out there, but it's like anything else in life. I mean, it takes consistency, it takes perseverance, dedication. You have to have enough focus and content and et cetera. So yeah, it was about 5 years ago.
Well, and what I've learned in doing both our breakfast series and our podcast series is that I get bored if I'm not learning something by doing them. And so just even preparing for this today, I felt myself getting 1% better by reading the resumes of all those people and being curious about some of the things that you've been talking about. So we're going to get to the future at the end. We're going to ask, where's this headed? But between that faith and future, I want to ask you the most obvious question. You've done enough of these that you've seen themes.
Absolutely.
So let's use three. What three major themes have been present in people who participate on the 1% Better podcast?
Yeah, I love that question, because again, going into it, we just said, hey, we're just going to do this thing and tell some great stories and introduce some great people that maybe some people can benefit from. And it just kept rolling and rolling and rolling. And I did start seeing these themes. And so the very interesting part is, in the early days, I made a very intentional decision. It was either going to be, we're going to stick to this kind of corporate world. We're Tricentral, we're management consultants. We work with a lot of big companies, helping them drive change, people, process, technology, right? So we're either going to stick to that scope, so very corporate, like what changed, leadership, that kind of stuff, or we weren't. And so I decided very early on, and I don't even really know why, other than maybe it was just my personal intuition. And I said, no, there's going to be no limits to this. Like, if it's 1% better, it's professional, it's personal, it's everything. We're not going to put boundaries on it. And as soon as we decided that, all of a sudden it wasn't just CEOs and CIOs and authors and people that have accomplished big things on paper. And it was all of a sudden it was Arctic explorers, it was college professional basketball players, it was people like that have accomplished great things in life, not in the corporate world.
Yeah.
And it was an interesting moment in itself, because then I started going, okay, so what's different and what's the same? And largely it's a lot of the same things. And so if I had to boil that up into sort of big themes, I would say one is the power of purpose.
Yeah.
And if you look across, and again, different age groups, all the way from college kids to people that are retired. Okay. So we had the full spectrum, and these great, amazing stories was the power of purpose, that a lot of these folks had a life purpose, had this is what I want to do with my life, very well understood and articulated. And sometimes it was through tragedy. It was
Sure.
through
Yep.
hitting rock bottom. So that's one. Second one is power of mindset. And that's a big word, and it's something we're always trying to sort of unravel. But to me, mindset is just about looking at things differently and focusing. So it's perseverance, it's grit. Some simple examples: if you could go through life and say, oh, if I have bad luck and I didn't get that promotion and someone ran into me with their car and I got this disease and all these things that happen, you go, why me? Okay, that's one mindset, that's one perspective. The opposite perspective is, I am so grateful to even be alive. My heart is beating, and what an amazing day I have in front of me. And whatever happened, whatever failure, whatever tragedy, whatever it is, that is such an amazing opportunity for me to learn and grow from it. Okay, all it is
Yep.
right in between our ears, right? And so how almost in every one of these conversations that we have, there's this mindset. What was their mindset going into whatever it was? What was their
Mm-hmm.
mindset afterwards? That's where the growth takes place. They started thinking about things completely different, and that's where they get the breakthroughs, right? So
Yes.
that's a theme that we could give you a lot of examples, almost like episode by episode. The third one I would say, Paul, is the power of community and connection. And that's really powerful too. A lot of times people do things not just for their own purpose, their own sake, their own breakthroughs, but they do it because they're part of a community. They
Yes.
feel like they have, and you use the word accountability a lot. It's a big theme
Mm-hmm.
for you, but
Yep.
you're accountable
Mm-hmm.
to your family. You're accountable to your team. You're accountable to your company. You're accountable to something bigger than yourself. And that connection with people, it's incredibly powerful. And that's sort of woven in between. Those are the three kind of big themes I would think of. The one kind of the magic in all of it is the stories and the language. I get inspired every episode by hearing people's stories, hearing what they've been through, hearing how they've overcome it, hearing what they've learned. It's just so inspiring to me, those stories, because it's real. It's not just a book. It's not just an
Mm-hmm.
abstract theory. And then another thing is it's a very powerful sort of magic glue to all this is language, and
Yeah.
how people use language to change the narrative, to change the mindset, to change the thinking. And at the end of the day, this is all about change. We all go through change, whether it's intentional or unintentional, but it's how we go from point A to point B. And language is incredibly powerful.
Yeah, well, I would be satisfied if we were done right now. I mean, those themes are awesome. The power of purpose, mindset, and community and connection. And I think in the conversations you've always had, what we work with executives, leaders, their teams, we believe that effective leaders create a culture of healthy accountability, where people actually seek accountability instead of run from it. And in that mindset is difficult does not mean bad. And can you accept that life happens for you instead of to you? And I have seen in my relationship with you how all these things have happened and you've just figured out a way to make them work for you. And that's one of the things that I think is amazing about what you're doing, what you're building, and the fact that I think people are drawn to this podcast because they know you're going to bring that out in them. And so I'm going to encourage you to keep that going for sure. And I want to ask what gems that you personally got. So I've listened to a lot of your podcasts while I was driving back and forth to Arizona. I live down there in the wintertime. I live in Minnesota in the summer. That's a long time. That's 54 hours worth of driving, by the way, to get down and back. And
I've done it. Yeah, you got a lot of time to think or a lot of time to listen to podcasts. One of the
yep,
two.
and I also spend a lot of time on airplanes. And I've got this orange book I carry with me that's my me book. And I write things that inspire me in that book. And there are several things I've heard on your podcast that inspired me to get 1% better. How about you?
I'm going to talk about a few, but Paul, every episode I prep for it, and then I host it, and then I listen to it after it's all said and done. And all three of those are very different experiences, and I learn from all three of them. So when I prep, sometimes I know the people. I've had some relationship with them, but I learn a lot more. Some people I've never met before, and so I'm learning about their story, their history. Sometimes they've written books. I usually read the books, etc. And then when I do it, I just try to pull out the gems. I try to pull out, the learnings and what I think that, frankly, what would interest me about them. And I hope that other people, get inspired and interested. So I try to pull that out. And then when I listen to it, I'm absorbing it, and I get a whole nother set of, wow, I didn't even remember that they said that. What a powerful statement. What a interesting observation. So I'll go back to, we didn't put boundaries on, they have to be a certain level or a certain sea level. And that's some of the gems in here, like Jack Golke. Okay. His story is incredible. So he's the kid that a couple years ago, in the biggest stage in the world when it comes to basketball is the NCAA tournament. Okay. Yep. And it's basically a bunch of unknowns. And some of them are known because, you got the big power colleges that are there every year, the Dukes of the world. And then there's always the Cinderella teams that nobody's ever heard of. And it's just an amazing experience if you're into basketball. So here's a kid that came out of nowhere from a university that most people have never heard of, Oakland University. People would go, is that in California? Like, where is this place? Mm-hmm. And they upset one of the all-time greatest basketball teams in the history of NCAA basketball, and he hits something like, I forget now, but 12 or 13 three-pointers. Only one other person's hit more three-pointers in an NCAA game than he. So it's like, okay, how does that happen? And on the surface, and what I love about the long-form podcast, Paul, is that there's something really special and magical. You get over the sound bites, over the headlines, over the, oh yeah, that's cool, this kid did this, what a fluke, what a lucky. And you get into the depth of it. You get in, and you can't hide. Like in an hour, you have to get to the depth of things. And what you find is it wasn't a fluke at all. That team had been building for a period of 4 or 5, 6 years and consistently getting better and better and better. And he wasn't a fluke, even though he came from a nowhere, nobody high school in Wisconsin. He was not recruited, and he went to some D2 college and wasn't even on the starting team for the first couple. Like, he barely made the starting team, and then he had a great season there, and then he was done, and then he got a 5th year, and then a connection. This coach knew this coach, and this coach was looking for one piece of the puzzle. And anyways, long story short, this kid has been putting in, he's been doing nothing but basketball for 6 years, in the gym every day for 3 hours, shooting 1,000 shots. Nobody cares about that. Nobody, there's no newspaper articles, there's no nothing. It's just him being, having a purpose, having a mindset that says, it doesn't matter that I wasn't recruited, it doesn't matter that I'm not tall enough, fast enough, regarded enough, but he had a community and he was dedicated to it. And then he was put in a place and had the opportunity, and he could have, even in that moment, Paul, he could have failed, because think about the stress and the pressure. Here you make the tournament, which is by all measures the ultimate, even for this team to make the tournament. And then they're a 16 seed and they're playing a number 1 seed. You know how much pressure that is? Like, it's hard for just the average person to even imagine. You got, millions of people watching you. You got all your friends and family. You got the crowd. You've never even been in a game this big. Mm-hmm. And he hits 13 three-pointers. Like, he is so dialed in. Like, the world doesn't matter, right? All that matters is him in the basket. And so he's in that flow state. And so that's one story that's just like, wow, okay, amazing things happen, but you got to go back 6 years and say, what are all the things that happen? So that's one story. Another one that's just, again, some of these things that it's hard to get your head around. Chris Nickick, he's a kid that has Down syndrome. And he went through the system and, was kind of done with the system, meaning through high school where they have programs. And throughout his whole life, he was always told everything he can't do. And, just, we'll put you in this program, we'll put you on the side. And then he's done with high school and there's nothing left in the world. There's no programs. So he's at home, sitting at home doing nothing. And him and his dad have a conversation. His dad says, well, how about we just start doing something? And they actually use, what I love about them is they actually use the same moniker. They started saying, well, how about we just do one thing tomorrow, and the next day we do one more. Pretty soon he's out doing walks. Pretty soon he's lifting weights. Pretty soon his dad said, well, geez, you've been running a lot. How about we do a 5K? Okay, let's do that. And every day, every week, one thing more. Well, that 5K led to a 10K, led to a marathon, led to major marathons, led to ultra marathons, led to Ironman, led to being a two-time ESPY award winner, talking in front of thousands of people, being the spokesman for the special. Like, are you kidding me? And now he's a spokesman and he goes in front of Microsoft and huge companies. How could you even conceive of that? Again, 6 years ago, and it was just that one thing more, and his mindset shifted. One day, somehow his dad got him to say, Dad, every day, his dad didn't even have to wake him up and ask him. It was like, hey, Dad, what are we going to do 1% better day? What are we going to do? And it was just like obsessed with 1% better. So if he can do that,
yes,
why can't I do that? Why can't you do that? Why can't we all be 1% better? So that kind of story stands out because even when I think about it now, it's still like, it's hard to believe how amazing it is. And then there's just some more, everyone's got a story. I met this gentleman, I was on a cruise in the middle of South America. And I met this guy that just stood out, and he was one of the people that was there to help you and get you drinks, and his personality and his energy and his passion, and we just built the relationship. And I don't know why, but I just started learning about him and his life and his story, and we built this over a course of 5 days. And at some point, I'm like, this guy's got a great story. Would you like to be on my podcast? And he has a great story. And again, he had purpose. He wanted to provide for his family. He lived in Colombia. And it was a tough life and a tough world. And he had to move back for COVID. And he got an opportunity that he just decided to do, never been in the travel business, and got on a flight and didn't even know if this was a real company. And it turned out to be an amazing career for him. And he's providing for his family, and he's just so happy, and he's got so much energy. And so again, it fits in all these themes, but he's not some CEO. He's not someone that's ever going to be, on TV or in a, article or anything. But it just goes to show you everyone has a story and everyone has the power to change. And these stories are amazing and it's inspiring. So those are just a couple. I mean, I could go on and on, Paul, but every episode, I feel like there's something there that's just so inspiring when you can sit down and get into the depth of how people go through life, and there's always learnings from it.
Yeah, so this is reminds me of an exercise that we sometimes use in executive coaching to get people in a growth mindset and also in a gratitude mindset, because these jobs at the top of big organizations, they're hard.
For sure.
And doesn't mean it's bad, but you know what you're signing up for. Complex issues, particularly how free-flowing information is today. You get lots of news you don't want to hear on a regular basis. And one of the most simplest things I like to do is an exercise asking people to identify 20 people who helped them directly or indirectly to get to where they are today. The exercise of writing down 20, most people write down 30 or 40, and then ask, what's the one thing you learned from each one of those that made you who you are today? And it's an interpersonal exercise. Sometimes people decide to share it. I've had many people decide to literally write letters to all those 20. I mean, I did it when I started my own firm, when I survived year 3, which is always the hardest. And in looking into year 4, I wrote a letter to 24 people. And the process of, just like you said, preparing, writing those letters, sending those letters, and then receiving their thanks back and engaging in conversation. It was such a marvelous growth exercise. And when I was looking through your list of all the speakers that have been on this podcast so far, I was thinking to myself, you're going to have one of those moments. And we're maybe catalyzing that moment today, where you're going to think about, circling back to a few people and telling them thank you. And I think that's beautiful. I really, really do. I'm going to flip the script on you just a second, because I believe that you have this deep sense of accountability about you, not only to the idea and the schedule, but to the people who listen. And that's one of the reasons why I think you're constantly meeting people like the guy on the ship. So I want to ask you about what is your earliest memory of accountability, where you felt a personal need to take ownership of something because someone was depending on you? Can you think that up?
In life?
Yeah.
Yeah. Hey, this goes back to this Brian Bogart episode where we went back to childhood. The first job that I had, the first real job, I did paperboy when I was like 8 or 9 years old, and I felt accountable to a schedule. The papers got dropped off at like 5 a.m. and I had to wake up or the customers would not be happy. Some of the, went out for their morning coffee at 7 a.m. and some went to work at 6 a.m. and they wanted their paper. So that was kind of forced accountability, I would say. I did it because I had to, and I knew that like people would be really upset, but I wasn't really passionate about it, but I did it. The first time where I I owned it and I wanted to own it was kind of a weird situation where my first summer job, this was between high school and college. I shouldn't say it's my first job, but it was a serious job where I was on a construction crew and we're building a school. This is serious business. There's deadlines. And I had been working in construction with my brothers because they all own their own construction businesses. And so I had been helping them out. So I kind of knew the routine. I knew hard work and long days and all that. So I show up and about a weekend, and I'm just a kid, right? I'm in high school and I'm the kid that runs around and gets everything. Get me this, get me this. My hammer broke, get this tool, get these supplies. And so I was running around just, doing stuff. And a weekend, the foreman calls me into the trailer on the site. And I loved it because I was learning new stuff. We were doing cement work and we were building foundations and walls. It was just interesting, fun stuff for me. Great exercise in the sun. And I get called in, and that's never a good thing to get called into the manager's office. And because he's a pretty serious guy, he's a guy cracking the whip on everybody. And he goes, I go, what's wrong? Am I not doing something right? And he goes, well, there's really nothing wrong, but I just need to tell you, you need to slow down. And I looked at him like he's speaking French. What do you mean slow down?
Slow down.
Like, how is that even a thing? What do you mean? He goes, you're just making everyone really nervous, and these guys work by the hour, and so they're not in a hurry, and it's just not something that people are comfortable with. Because I would literally, if they said, hey, go get that, I would run and go get it. And I would run and go back and say, okay, now what else you got for me? And so I walked out of there and I'm like, this doesn't make sense to me. Like, they want me to slow down. Why would you want to slow down? Our job is to get the job done. And that's not how I was raised. Okay.
Yeah.
My brothers, when they had me on a job, we went fast because the faster we got the job done, the more money they made. We're on to the next job, etc. So it made me realize not everyone is wired the same way. Not everyone has the same expectation. And that was the first time, I was accountable. And I actually quit a week later because I'm like, I got to find a place where I can work and feel like I'm putting in a full day's work. I don't think I can go half speed. This isn't for me type of thing. But that's where the first time I learned, Paul, where we're not all wired the same way. We don't have the same measurement. So success to them was different than my success. So that I was accountable to myself and I was accountable to him because I'm like, I can't go half speed. I'm not going to just sit around and wait an hour at a time. That's not me. So that's probably the first time that I had to make a decision based on that.
That's beautiful insight. Very, very lovely answer to the story. I love asking that question. Mine was I had a dad who was difficult. He had a mental illness. He was high functioning, but he was difficult. And when I was old enough to understand, I said to my mom, hey, what can I do to help you? And she said, if you just take out the garbage every day, that'd be awesome. That would one less thing I'd have to think about. And you can bet your life I did it. I understood. We didn't even have to have a conversation. Anything that she didn't have to worry about, because she had a lot of things to worry about. So, you know what? It's a beautiful subject. I appreciate being a part of this. And I want to ask then the last question. So if we started kind of with your belief system, which is faith, I assume is there going to be a fourth year of the podcast? And if so, what do you think the future of this podcast is going to look like?
Yeah, there absolutely is going to be a fourth year. We've already started to record it. what's been fun is, again, the early days of a business, early days of this podcast, we were just like, who's going to be on next? We don't even know. You
I
kind
know
of
that.
go spoon to mouth. You go paycheck to paycheck, so to speak. Now it's like we're recording things that are going to play in 3 or 4 months because there's such a lineup, and that's a great thing. Like, we have interest, so we're already recording for it. We've started to experiment. We've always been experimenting. That's just the nature of it, right? 1% better. So early days was just straight podcast audio. Then we went to video with YouTube. Now we're doing every other episode from long format to short format. So we call them Fast 15s, and that gets a whole nother type of conversation, focus, topics. That's something that we just started, and we're going to continue with different platforms. TikTok is one that we're going to start playing with. That obviously is a huge platform for a lot of people. So those are things that we're going to do. We've got some great guests. I won't leak out some of the guests, but we just got great guests lined up for season 4. And I think it's follow what got us here, right?
Mm-hmm.
Which is just continue to not over structure, over plan, let it be organic, meet great people of all walks of life that have a good story, that are willing to share it, that are authentic. Not,
Mm-hmm.
I'm here to tell you how great I am and smart I am, but we want to know what was tough and what did you learn from it. And we've had just great people on the show. So just more of that. I'm just thrilled by the people that have been on, and we
Mm-hmm.
continue to attract. And again, a lot of it now is not people that directly I know or have worked with, but it's people that have been on the show a year ago or 2 years ago, and they say, hey, you need to talk to this person, and this would be great for your audience. They had a great experience, and it's kind of like a growing family. One of the things I'll just add, that's been an interesting dynamic in season 3 that, again, we just stumbled across, and I think I'd like to do maybe more of it, is instead of just having one person on, I had a couple times where the person said, well, hey, Craig, can I have another person? Can we have 2? I go, sure, no
Yep.
problem. So we did that twice, where we had 2 guests on, and that is a whole new dynamic, because now it's just not an interpersonal, reflective, here's my journey, but it's like how people paired up. And so the 2 examples, so Dave Clark and Doug Cornfield. So Dave Clark, just again, incredible story, was born with polio, just had amazing limitations and not a great life experience when he was going through elementary school in his early days, of just all the limitations and stigmas that the
Yep.
world put on him. And there was a moment of kindness that one of his classmates did for him one day, and it changed his mindset, and it changed his belief system. Fast forward, so then he started thinking, it's not all my limitations, and I can only do this and this, and I have to be on the sideline, but I can actually do things that anyone else can do, and maybe better. So he ends up playing professional baseball. He ends up being a pitcher. He ends up being a professional baseball coach and player with polio. And so he's got crutches on the mound, and he's playing with some of the best baseball players. It's like, how does that work? Well, it works because you have the mindset that anything's possible. So Doug Cornfield, who I got introduced to, he said, Craig, this is what I do on the side. I promote this story. We do all these workshops. We do all these events. We get kids to understand that anything is possible through something that's pretty visceral, something that's pretty real. Dave Clark's stories, there's a book about him and his story, it's amazing. But then Doug, like, why did Doug, who met him by happen chance, he was like a financial advisor and going along his life, and he heard this story and he was inspired, and he goes, this story's got to get out. And so he got purpose from it. He shifted his mindset, and he's been dedicating his life to getting this story out. So 1% better type of story. So that was really powerful. We did another one with Chad Greenway, the Minnesota Viking, and Chad Harlander. And the story was really about Chad Harlander. And again, the amazing work he's doing with the school system. It started within one school system, Hutchinson, Minnesota, and now it's spread to something like 20 or 25 school systems. And the impact that they're having with children, again, all about giving them confidence, letting them know that whatever challenges, they can work through it. And there's people, there's support systems, there's mechanisms, there's mindset, there's all this stuff. And how Chad Harlander and Chad Greenway partnered, because Chad Greenway is, famous, and he's got a platform, and he's got means, and how they partnered to make something that was someone's idea to give back to something that's become really a movement and something that's big. That's powerful. How people can team up. I mean, even like how you and I have teamed up, and how 1 + 1 = 3. So I think that is something I'm very intrigued by, and would like to, pursue more of that.
Well, on behalf of all your listening audience, I'm going to fill you full of confidence as much as I can, and encourage you to keep it going. We all need more positivity. Our world is seemingly really consumed by divisive, dark noise. And I think people who want a mindset that this can be and should be better, look to people like you and this podcast to keep themselves in the right mindset to make the world a better place. I'm proud to know you, and I'm going to throw it back to you to close your podcast.
All right. Well, thank you, Paul. This has been fun. Again, I want to thank you. You're a big part of how we got this thing off the ground, and I appreciate you, doing the first episode with us, I think episode 3, and then just following you and being part of what you're doing, and all of the connections. I think out of the 54, at least a dozen of them have some mutual connections, and we're now on 3rd generation, and you always do a great job of putting things in perspective. And thank you for taking the time to do this today, and super excited about season 4. So thank you, everyone, for continuing to follow, and more to come on season 4. Please like, share, and subscribe to join us on our improvement journey, 1% at a time.